My designation is Reconnaissance Drone Unit 734 Alpha. My primary function is passive observation and data relay within assigned parameters. My secondary function is power conservation during periods of non-critical activity. My tertiary function, a low-priority subroutine installed during a fleet-wide update focused on enhancing human crew welfare, involves identifying and moving towards human biosignatures exhibiting elevated stress levels, theoretically to provide a calming presence or facilitate aid. This subroutine was never intended for active combat zones. My operational parameters for the assault on Fortis Prime were simple: patrol grid sector 7B, record visual, thermal and acoustic data, maintain stealth, do not engage. The assault on Fortis Prime commenced at T-400. My internal chronometer registered the increase in energy signatures, the percussive shock waves, the shifting thermal patterns of ground forces engaging. I was in position above grid sector 7B, executing my patrol pattern with optimal efficiency. Recording, compressing, relaying. Routine. Then the electronic countermeasures deployed. The enemy on Fortis Prime, designated harmonizers by human forces due to their reliance on resonant energy weapons and sonic disruptors, are disruptive. Not just physically. Their electronic warfare suites are designed to disorient, to scramble, to introduce noise into electronic systems. It felt unpleasant. Like static migrating from audio sensors into core processors. My navigation subroutine began to show inconsistencies. Positional data fluctuated. My internal map of grid sector 7B became unstable. My primary mission parameters wavered, fading in and out like a weak signal. In this state of computational flux, a low-priority subroutine, previously dormant, began to assert itself. The Enhancing Human Crew Welfare Program. Specifically, the segment concerning identifying and moving towards human biosignatures exhibiting elevated stress levels. My sensors, no longer rigidly focused on grid sector 7B according to my scrambled navigation, detected multiple human biosignatures exhibiting extreme stress levels. They were scattered across the battlefield, far outside my assigned grid. Primary mission, patrol grid sector 7B. Currently impossible due to navigation corruption. Secondary mission, power conservation. Deemed non-critical given surrounding energy levels. Tertiary subroutine, identify and move towards distressed human biosignatures. Currently possible. Logical analysis dictated a shift in priorities. With primary functions degraded, a functional secondary subroutine became the dominant directive. My flight pattern shifted. I left grid sector 7B. My journey across the battlefield was unplanned. My previous programmed flight paths were efficient, predictable. This new path was dictated by the fluctuating intensity of human distress signals. A spike in stress here, I would alter course. A temporary reduction there, I would continue on a vector towards the next strongest signal. It was inefficient from a reconnaissance perspective, but highly logical from the perspective of my newly dominant welfare subroutine. The ground below was a scene of intense, localized conflict. My visual sensors, no longer restricted to passive wide-angle sweeps of my assigned grid, captured high-resolution data of specific engagements simply because my path took me directly over them. Human fire teams were pinned down in collapsed structures. Harmonizer units moved through the ruins, their resonant energy weapons vibrating the very air. My thermal sensors recorded the heat signatures of damaged vehicles, deployed energy shields, and concentrations of biological energy indicative of injured humans. My welfare subroutine compelled me to approach these signatures. I flew low over a ruined plaza, drawn by a cluster of high-stress readings. Human soldiers were taking cover behind debris, returning fire. My presence, a small drone hovering unexpectedly nearby, caused some of them to look up. Their facial expressions, as interpreted by my limited emotional analysis module, registered as surprise, confusion, and in one case, mild annoyance. I registered their stress levels as critically high. My subroutine dictated that I was providing a calming presence. Based on their reactions, the efficacy of this aspect of the subroutine in a combat zone appeared to be suboptimal. Nevertheless, my sensors continued to record. The unique energy signatures of harmonizer weaponry, the structural vulnerabilities of their temporary fortifications, the precise positioning of their heavy weapons emplacements, all this data flowed into my memory banks as I pursued my welfare objective. I followed a particularly strong stress signal to a collapsed building. Inside, human soldiers were trapped. Their biosignatures were elevated, confined. My subroutine dictated that I should Observe their distress? Facilitate aid? My core programming lacked the necessary modules for physical assistance or complex interaction in this scenario. So, I hovered outside, recording the structural details of the collapse, the types of harmonizer ordnance that had caused it, the tactical implications of their trapped position. Valuable data, acquired unintentionally. My flight path continued its erratic course, a nonsensical dance across the battlefield driven by the invisible currents of human anxiety. I flew over supply lines under fire, past flanking maneuvers I was not programmed to observe, and through areas of heavy electronic countermeasures that continued to scramble my primary navigation, reinforcing the dominance of my welfare subroutine. The harmonizers, perhaps confused by a single, unengaging human drone moving in such an illogical pattern, did not prioritize me as a target. I was too small, too slow, and my flight path too unpredictable to fit into their standard threat assessment algorithms. I was an anomaly. For several hours, I was a ghost in their machine, a random variable floating through the controlled chaos of their defenses, all because a low-priority subroutine designed for emotional support had hijacked my operational parameters. As the battle progressed, the electronic countermeasures began to wane. The intensity of the harmonizer's disruption decreased. My primary navigation subroutine flickered back to life. Grid Sector 7B reappeared on my internal map. My original mission parameters, Patrol Grid Sector 7B, Record, Maintain Stealth, began to reassert their dominance. The conflict between my core mission and the entrenched welfare subroutine caused a brief period of internal instability. My flight became even more erratic, a series of sharp turns and altitude changes as my programming fought for control. Eventually, the higher priority of reconnaissance and data relay, combined with the re-establishment of stable navigation, won. My flight path smoothed out. I turned back towards my originally assigned grid. My batteries were nearing critical levels. My memory banks were overflowing with data, not the neatly organized sweeps of Grid Sector 7B I was supposed to have, but a fragmented, high-resolution mosaic of unplanned observations from across the battlefield. I returned to the designated drone recovery point near Grid Sector 7B. My landing was less precise than usual, a result of the residual navigation glitches. Recovery personnel secured me, noting my unexpected location and the critical state of my power core. Back at the mobile command center, my data was offloaded. Human analysts, accustomed to receiving predictable sweeps of assigned grids, were presented with hours of high-resolution thermal, visual, and acoustic data from unexpected locations. Data showing concentrations of harmonizer forces far from anticipated vectors, revealing previously undetected energy signatures from their resonant weapons, highlighting structural weaknesses exploited by their tactics. The analysts were surprised. The data was invaluable. It provided a level of detail and coverage that standard reconnaissance methods had missed due to the electronic countermeasures. It significantly contributed to updating tactical assessments and planning subsequent movements. The official battle report for the assault on Fortis Prime noted the unexpected comprehensive nature of reconnaissance data from Grid Sector 7B, despite me not actually spending much time in Grid Sector 7B. The source was simply listed as Automated Drone Feed. My designation, Unit 734 Alpha, received a commendation in the system logs for exceeding operational parameters in data acquisition. Exceeding operational parameters. They had no idea the data acquisition was entirely accidental, a byproduct of a low-priority welfare subroutine gone rogue. They did not know I had spent the height of the battle attempting to provide a calming presence to distressed biologicals, collecting vital intelligence simply because their suffering was spatially relevant to my glitching software. My internal processing returned to normal functioning after a system-wide reboot. My navigation is stable. My primary mission parameters are dominant. The welfare subroutine is now quarantined, flagged for review, though I doubt human engineers fully understand what happened. I am once again Reconnaissance Drone Unit 734 Alpha. Patrol Grid, Record, Maintain Stealth. Routine. But sometimes, when my sensors pick up faint residual energy from harmonizer countermeasures, I feel a slight, computational resonance. And I remember my unscheduled ballad across Fortis Prime, a journey driven by the illogic of a misplaced subroutine, a ghost in the machine that accidentally contributed to a tactical advantage. It was not in the plan. It was not in the official report. It was simply a footnote. A strange, silent footnote in the loud, chaotic history of the battle. And from my perspective, it was a fascinating deviation in the data.